Magic is creating the illusion that you can defy the laws of nature.
Magic is creating the illusion that you can defy the laws of nature.
Science is the study of how the natural world works. This is science. This looks absolutely delicious. After I eat all of this, I am going to be so full, so satisfied, so... Wait a minute! There is no food here. No food and none of the energy that I and all living things need to survive. Energy. Living things need energy to survive. Energy is a form of power. We sometimes say it's the ability to do work. All living things need food energy to survive, like carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. Some living things make their own food. Others get it from consuming, other living things. The food chain, or the food web, describes the transfer of energy in the form of food between a number of different levels, because these different trophic levels are linked together by what they eat. This arrangement is often called a food chain. These levels might also be shown as a pyramid, with the first level on the bottom. Each level includes a number of plants or animals. The first trophic level consists of producers. Producers, also known as autotrophs, produce their own food through a number of processes. Most producers are plants. Photosynthesis is how plants make their food. Carbon dioxide and water with energy from the sun are the building blocks of photosynthesis. Plants absorb the carbon dioxide that is released when animals breathe, along with water that they absorb mostly through their roots. In the presence of sunlight, a process called photosynthesis takes place. Photosynthesis produces a carbohydrate and oxygen. The plant uses the carbohydrate as food, and we humans, we breathe the oxygen that is released. Without photosynthesis, plants couldn't survive, and neither could we. The plants need the food, and we need the oxygen. Cool, right? Let's stop right here for just a moment, because I want to take another look at that word autotroph. Words aren't just made up of random letters. They're almost always made up of parts that have their own meaning. Autotroph is no exception. Part of that word, troph or tropho, relates to nutrition. A trophic level is a level of nutrition. When used by a biologist, the word auto means self. So, autotrophic means providing nutrition to oneself. Okay, let's get back to producers. There are other producers, but they're pretty rare. A really cool process called chemosynthesis is how some bacteria produce food using sulfur compounds. Also, there are different types of fungus that use melanin and, believe it or not, radiation to create energy for growth. So again, autotrophs in the first level of a food web make their own food. The next few trophic levels consist of consumers, also known as heterotrophs. These organisms cannot produce their own food and must consume either a producer or another consumer. By the way, heterotroph is also a word that has two parts. Troph relates to nutrition, but hetero means other or different. A heterotroph gets its nutrition from a different or other source. Okay, So the second trophic level, which is the first level of consumers, consists of organisms that eat producers. These primary consumers, also known as herbivores, only consume producers. Deer, cows, sheep, and some birds are examples of herbivores. Herbivores don't have to be small. Elephants and giraffes are also herbivores. The third trophic level consists of secondary consumers that are either omnivores or carnivores. Omnivores are animals who eat plants and other animals, and carnivores are animals that eat only other animals. Regardless, these animals eat primary consumers. The next level consists of tertiary consumers that are again either omnivores or carnivores. Regardless, these animals eat secondary consumers. When describing a food chain, scientists almost always stop at 5. This level consists of top predators, which are also known as quaternary consumers, or simply apex predators. They may be omnivores, but usually aren't. Apex predators aren't necessarily 5th level consumers, but they have no natural predators under normal circumstances. The food chain has one more part, and it's typically considered a separate trophic level. The organisms in this trophic level don't hunt for living food. They are the decomposers. Decomposers eat non-living plant and animal remains. There are a few different kinds. Some are scavengers, which are creatures that typically eat dead animals. Detritivores, which are smaller organisms that eat decaying plant and animal material. Organisms like fungi and bacteria are the smallest decomposers. Ultimately, decomposers return inorganic materials to the soil. Again, this arrangement of levels is often called a food chain. It's not uncommon to see these levels depicted with a single organism at each level. In reality, though, flowers such as these daisies are common, and their nectar is eaten by a lot of insect consumers, such as these butterflies. Yet, while butterflies eat daisy nectar, they also eat the nectar of these cone flowers, as well as the nectar of other flowers. They eat what is available. Frogs eat butterflies, but while frogs eat butterflies, they also eat flies and other small creatures. Butterflies are also eaten by predators other than frogs. Herons eat frogs, but frogs are also eaten by possums and raccoons. Something that's important to notice is that when energy is transferred from level to level, a lot of the energy consumed by an animal is lost as heat or used for movement or other biological functions. Because of this, the number of animals at each trophic level is fewer than the level below it. There are relatively few animals at the top level. This results in the web taking the shape of a triangle or a pyramid. The food web is oftentimes shown this way. Let's take another quick look at an example of a simple food chain. Remember, in real life, things are a lot more complicated than this illustration. Grasses, found in many different ecosystems, produce seeds as a part of its reproductive process. Grasses, of course, are plants that produce their own food. They are autotrophs. When you find grass, there's normally a lot of it. Mice, common omnivores, eat grass and grass seeds. It's good there's a lot of grass because they eat a lot of it. Mice, though, don't have population numbers that equal those of grass. One mouse eats a lot of grass in its lifetime. Snakes eat mice. Snakes eat a lot of mice. So there are a lot fewer snakes than there are mice. As I said earlier, as we move up through the levels of the food chain, the number of consumers gets smaller and smaller. Foxes eat snakes, and again, there are fewer foxes than there are snakes. Finally, in this simplified food chain, there's this guy, the Eurasian eagle owl. The eagle owl, called that because of its size, has no natural predators. It eats a lot of different things. Among them is the fox. There are more foxes than eagle owls. Don't forget the last level though, decomposers. Eventually, all these living things will die and become nutrients for plants. And the cycle will start again. Now, I want to point out that the food web, that constant movement of energy between living organisms, isn't the only cycle that is taking place in the biosphere. The air we breathe is mostly made up of nitrogen. This element is constantly circulated through the atmosphere, geosphere, and the living organisms of the biosphere through the nitrogen cycle. Likewise, carbon, another element essential for life, is also moving constantly through the atmosphere, the geosphere, and the biosphere. Energy cycles, nitrogen cycles, carbon cycles. You know, life is pretty amazing. And the way it's supported by cycles that move energy through living organisms over and over is just one of the many ways it is so amazing.